Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Gintama 2, a Japanese comedy action flick from 2018 that is based on the manga series of the same name. I previously reviewed the first Gintama live action film on this channel a few years ago. It was surprisingly fun, but does this sequel live up to the original? Well, let's find out. So, Realm of the Samurai, that name for our land is now just a memory. 20 years ago, alien beings descended to disrupt the peaceful world of Edo. We named them Amanto, or Sky People. They took over and redeveloped our entire city. The Bakufu government became no more than their puppet, and initial attempts were made to expel the invaders. A fearless band of patriots fought the good fight, but after terrible sacrifice, they were defeated. Fearing another rebellion, the Amanto banned all swords, and the samurai sank into irrelevance. So in this sequel, Gintoki Sakata, played by Shunoguri, Shinpachi Shimura, played by Masaki Suda, and Kagura, played by Kana Hashimoto, they run short of money while running their office. They are not able to pay their rent and decide to do part-time work. And around that time, the Special Forces Shinsengumi is divided among itself, which causes conflict. So we have the main characters returning in the sequel, and then we have this, faction that's kind of like a separate plot at first that begins to fracture, and you have a power struggle, and that's what the conflict is all about. So the film begins with our protagonists getting basically beat up by the landlady for missing a few months' worth of rent. And one odd thing about the story structure in Gintama 2 is that our three main protagonists are separated from the main conflict for much of the opening half of the film. You know, we have the villains doing stuff on the side, and then we cut to our protagonists basically goofing around in scenarios that are completely unrelated to the main conflict. But I actually think this was a pretty good idea by the filmmakers, because the villains in Gintama 2 are less amusing than the ones in the first film. So the main baddie here is a bit dry, kind of dull, not much of a personality or multidimensionality to this guy at all. And the secondary villain is a bit more fun, the dude with the blue hair who shows up. But still, I think it was a good idea that they cut back to our protagonists in a separate kind of storyline to keep infusing that humor while you're developing the main conflict until these two stories collide later on. These movies, both of the Gintama films, are heavily reliant on comedy, and I personally enjoy the humor in these. Some of it is culturally specific. I definitely think a few jokes went over my head, but most of it does work, and I get most of it. It's kind of a high energy, wacky style of humor, but I like it because it's much sharper than you might expect. There are a bunch of punchlines that are accentuated by sharp editing and nutty facial expressions. You'll know what I mean when you watch the films. Kana Hashimoto in particular is freaking hilarious in these movies. I mean, just the way she picks her nose, it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh watching this girl pick her nose. They could have added 20 more scenes of this girl picking her nose, and I would have laughed every single time. She has a lot of charisma, and I look forward to seeing her in comedies in the future. And I actually think Shun Oguri is more convincing in comedy than he is in drama. He's actually pretty funny in these movies as well. There's a few highlight humorous moments are the haircut gone bad scene, which was that one made me laugh pretty good. And especially if you're familiar at all with samurai culture, that one's a good one. There's a scene where our male protagonists need to dress like women in order to make some money on the side. That scene does go on for a bit too long, I think, but it's still funny enough. So overall, I think the jokes in Gintama work out quite well. I like them. Now, in terms of action, Gintama 2 does repeat at least one of the flaws of the first film. And that is that it constantly interrupts the action scenes for character monologues or dialogue. That's definitely the most frustrating aspect of these movies for me. Too many times, especially during the second half of this film, where you're in the middle of an action scene and then you cut away or the action stops so that the characters can make speeches to each other. You know, it limits the excitement quite a lot, I think. However, I do think Gintama 2 does have better action scenes than its predecessor. You know, there are multiple sword fights on a train that are quite good. There's a ninja sword fight that's quite good. And the choreography is more complex in the sequel. So it's not going to be on the same level as like a Rurouni Kenshin. It's not that awesome. Don't expect that. But it is pretty good. It is good, and it's an upgrade from the last film. So it's nice to see that upgrade here. But again, they need to string the fights together and keep the monologues like separate, I think, if they decide to make any more of these. The runtime is over 2 hours long. It's a bit on the long side. There are a few scenes that I do think drag out longer than they should. So they could have edited and streamlined it a little bit more. But when all is said and done, I think these 2 live-action Gintama films are pretty good. They put me in a good mood. And I recommend them primarily for that reason. And I'm interested in checking out both the anime and the manga this is based on at some point in the future. Now, the first live-action film is available streaming, and the sequel seems to be available only on all-region DVD with English subs. So, if you're in the mood for kind of a lighter and rather unique comedy action flick, given the fact that you have, you know, futuristic type of technology that's set in the samurai era, you know, that's the selling point also for these 2 films. So, if you think that might be interesting to you, check them out. I think they're pretty good. And as always, I will see you next time.